This fancy dancy building right here is actually a fully automatic bone meal farm that I've made in my Minecraft survival world. The way it works is when you go inside, on the interior of the house, you have this fully automatic farm using observers and pistons, and the kelp will grow, fall up the water, and go into the collection system where it gets harvested out back. And it's simple. We just have it set up to a composter where it makes bone meal instead of collecting the kelp. You could also just have it set up to a chest, but we're showing you the way to make it an automatic bone meal farm. So before you make this project, you need to collect some materials first. What you're going to need is you're going to need 14 observers, 14 pistons, about a stack of building blocks, about a stack of glass blocks if you want to see it. If not, you can just use regular building blocks, about half a stack of redstone dust, 14 kelp in total, but we only have 7 right now. 2 water buckets, 2 hoppers, 1 single chest, and 1 single composter. Once you're ready, you can grab all these materials and get ready to start your project. One of the things I forgot to mention was later on in the video, I noticed that I forgot to mention a little thing you might need, but you're gonna need a total of 16 signs. Can be any signs you want, just make sure you have at least 16 signs. Once you have that final ingredient, you can find yourself a nice flat area to work in. And the first step of this project is to grab your building blocks and build a 14 block wide straight line. So that's 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So that's 14 in total along a nice long strip of land. And then grab your pistons and place the pistons directly above those blocks we just placed, but have the face of the piston all facing the same direction towards us. This is kind of important. Make sure the piston is facing the right way. You should have a wall of pistons that looks like that. Now, once you have your wall of pistons all set and all placed, that's it for the pistons. We can move on to the next part of our project. Now, the next part of this project is going to be you're going to take building blocks once more, and you're going to build 1 block behind each and every single one of these pistons. So it's going to be 14 more blocks in total. And once we have 1 block behind each and every one of these pistons, we're going to head back over to either side of this farm. I'm going to this side. We're going to place a temporary block above the piston and a temporary block next to that one, getting rid of this temporary block. We're going to place more temporary blocks all along the line of the pistons, diagonally across one. Just something that looks like this. Now, the reason we're doing this is because next you want to grab your observers and place the observers facing into those blocks. It just makes it easier to place. Because we want the eye of the observer facing towards the back of the farm and the little face of the observer facing towards the front of the farm. And you'll know you're doing it right and it's facing the right way if the piston face and the face of the observer are facing the right way, and you have this little eyeball, red eyeball in the back. Once you've done that, we're going to go back to the top of the farm and get rid of all those temporary blocks I just placed. It is kind of a pain, but I think it's totally worth it considering you don't have to mess around with the observers too much. So as you can see, every single observer and piston face is pointing directly towards us. Once you've done that, you're going to grab your redstone dust and place 1 single redstone dust behind each and every observer. You'll know you're doing it right if it starts to chain up like this, where one's going to the observer and the other one's connecting to the next piece of redstone next to it. Now, once you've had that, the way to test it is by placing or removing a block in front of the observer, and the observer will detect a change, sending signal to the piston, and the piston will fire. The best way to test this, place 2 blocks like so. You'll know it's working if the block gets moved. And as you can see, the whole row is going up and not just the one. That's how we know they're all linked together. This also helps with efficiency and will help collect the resources faster. This also works for a lot of other farms, but for now we're just using it as a kelp farm. After you've done that, you're going to place blocks like this, leaving a 1 block gap in between on the ground. That's where our kelp is going to be. And then you should have something that looks like this, like a little circle or a little ditch. Have something that looks exactly like that. Now, once you're ready to go on to the next step, you're going to grab your building blocks once more, head to the top of the farm, and place 1 block above the observers like so on each and every single one. And now once you've done that, you're going to build 1 block to the back of the farm like so. It shows 2 blocks in total. This should be covering the redstone now, so you shouldn't be able to see the redstone. And once you have that, the next part of this is quite simple. This is the only redstone. You're going to simply grab and maybe right click over the redstone, and we're just kind of boxing that redstone like a little So it's in its own cubby. The way we're doing this, or why we're doing this, is because if we place water, we don't want the water to destroy the redstone. The best way to do this is by doing that. And then again, like how we did with the first part down below, we're going to make another trench using this set of blocks we just made right here. So we're just simply adding a temporary block in the middle to boost it up, and then adding a corner here, same as we did with the one on the ground earlier. And then once you have that done, you're going to grab your glass blocks or any other type of building blocks. It doesn't necessarily matter. And you're going to place a 2-block tall glass window in front of all these, directly on the blocks we placed below, in the same shape and the same pattern. Have something that looks like this. And then we're going to place a whatchamacallit, we're going to take one more, I think. Yeah, so we're going to do one more, sorry. We're going to do one more glass block right above those. It's going to be 3 in total. Make sure you have enough to do that. Once I grabbed a few more glass blocks, I went and did it 3 blocks tall, just so we have enough room for the water to scoop over. And then grab your building blocks once again and place one more level of block above that again. And this is going to be the top layer of the farm. Build 2 more out towards the back on both sides to act like a funnel or a trap. That way the water can only go a certain direction. And then we're going to build this back side up 1 more as well. You'll see what we're doing later on, and it'll make a little bit more sense. Now, once we have this, the next step you're going to want to do is you're going to probably want to grab your water buckets, and we got to turn all of these into source blocks. Now, there's a lot of ways you can do this. You can either do it by, one at a time, turning each one into a source block, going all the way up, starting with the top, or starting at the bottom, working your way up, using this water over here. As you can see here, the observers are detecting the change of the water. That's also a good sign. It lets you know it's working. So you can use the bucket method by doing that. I recommend, if you're going to use the bucket method, by taking 2 buckets right here and making a water source in the trench we just made, and then just an infinite water source, and then using that to help you kind of fill in some of these spots, because I know it can be a pain, and this is definitely not the easiest way to do it. I'm going to show you an easier way, the way I prefer to do it. But the best way to do it is at least by having 1 water source block at the top of each and every one here before we continue. So all I'm doing here is I am simply placing a water source block at each and every single one. So it's going to be 14 water source blocks in total. You should have something that looks like this, with the water flowing over and out afterwards, because now that you've placed all your source blocks. As you can see here, I planted just some temporary kelp on the bottom just to get ourselves started, because you're going to need 14 for this, and I only had 7, and rather than waiting and growing it, I figured I'd let it grow while I'm working on the rest of the farm. But as you can see here, the water should be flowing towards the back of the farm like this. And this is going to be the ideal time to grab those signs I was telling you about earlier in the video. You're going to grab your sign and right-click it. You can type a message on it. You can do whatever. Anything is fine. And you're going to place 14 in total, 1 on every single one of these back blocks here. So we should have 14 in total. And the last 2 is right here. It doesn't matter if you accidentally type on them. It doesn't affect it at all. So as you can see, the water cuts off right at the edge there. And now we can take a building block, and we can test it by throwing a building block over there. As you can see, we need to make those source blocks, like I said before, because otherwise it won't float to the top. But if we throw a block there, we can at least tell the basic mechanism is working, or the basic function of it is working, just not the floating part. But before we do that, I'm going to show you how to finish this real quick. You're going to take a bucket of water, place it in this corner. Take a bucket of water and place it in this corner. And once you have that, you're going to see where they meet. They're meeting on these 2 blocks right here. You're going to pick one of them. I'm going to pick the one towards the right, and you're going to dig down, get rid of that block there, and then we're going to hop down into the hole with our chest, our hoppers, and our composters. So now if you just want this to be a kelp farm, you would simply, place your chest and then place your hopper on top of it. And then that would be it. And that it would just collect the kelp, and that would be it. But we want to do a composter to collect bone meal from this farm, because we don't really need kelp. So again, if you're doing that, you're going to place a block, place a chest and place a hopper like that. And then once you have that, we're going to go back and just make sure that the blocks are flowing into this by, throwing some down. As you can see, both sides are working. They're both getting collected just fine. And if we go down to the back of the farm, we go down here. As you can see here, yeah. So we're all the oak planks are falling perfectly into the chest, into the hopper. And once you have that, you can just use that for kelp. Or if you want to make it a composter, you're going to get rid of that chest again. And then we're going to clear up some area for us so it's a little easier to work with. This is not mandatory. You're going to grab your composter, place the composter underneath the hopper so the hopper is feeding into the top of the composter. And then once you have that, you're going to remove the block underneath the composter and then place a chest either to the left or the right with a hopper underneath facing into the chest. So it should be hopper into composter and then hopper into chest from the bottom of the composter. And the way you can tell this is working is if you right click in the composter and then you get bone meal. And then the way you also can tell if it's working is if you put some seeds or anything that can be in the composter inside the hopper there. And if it starts making bone meal, you know it's working. And while we were doing that, as you can see here, my plan was working great. We were starting to get more and more kelp from this. Again, that was just temporary. What you're going to want to do is when you're ready, you're going to dig one block down or place one block on that block. Doesn't matter. I just want the extra loot, so I'm going to go an extra block down. I'm using a respiration helmet, so it's a little easier for me. I'm sure you probably are very angry at me at this point in time. But you're going to place soul sand, place 14 soul sand, and this is how we're going to help make the source blocks. As you can see, we already have a few source blocks. The way you know is by the bubbles going up, almost making a bubble-like elevator. But over here, like I said before, there's bubbles over here, but there's no bubbles here. That's because this side is some of it's a bubble elevator, but some of it's not. That's why it wasn't working so well when trying to collect the items. So the biggest thing we can do here is now use the kelp to our advantage rather than go in with a bucket and trying to fix all the spots. We're going to use the kelp to our advantage here and simply just let the kelp turn every single one of these blocks into a source block. Same thing you do when making a bubble elevator. If you've ever made one of those, it's the same concept. So again, place one kelp on every single block of the soul sand. And then as the kelp grows, it'll turn those blocks into source blocks, the water blocks. But unfortunately, it will only do it up to the observers. So we want to make sure it goes all the way up. So definitely before we continue, you definitely want to disable this project. All you have to do is grab your axe and then just get rid of the redstone behind the observers temporarily. And that's if you didn't do it like I said before. I was just waiting. So this is just definitely like an extra step that you don't need to do, as long as they're all source blocks and you have the soul sand. Once you have that, as you can see, the kelp will slowly grow, and since the machine is not on, it will not harvest the kelp. So it'll go to the full height, turning all those blocks into source blocks. As you see here, after a little while of waiting, they've all grown to full height. So the next thing we're going to want to do is we're going to want to get rid of all this kelp. And as you can see, I'm immediately getting tossed up in the air, which shows you that the project is working well. As you can see, I'm getting chucked up. Even the items are getting flung out of it, so that's such a good thing. But once you have that, again, this is definitely, I'm doing this backwards. Please do not do what I do. Do as I say, not as I do. You know what I'm saying? We just got to make sure you remove all the kelp and then go back. And the easiest way is probably to do this beforehand. But like I said, I never said I was smart. I just said I knew how to do these farms. Once you have that, we're going to dig a little trench here. And we're going to dig out these blocks here so it's a little easier for us to work with. Again, this is a lot more hassle than it needs to be. We're going to replace all these blocks at the end, obviously, but we're just doing this so it's easier to plant the kelp without having to mine all the glass. So now once you've done that, you can plant one kelp back on each and every one of these. And then once you've done that, make sure we replace these blocks in the front that we removed in the first place. So we're going to replace all these blocks. That way we won't have water pouring all over the place. That is going to affect the efficiency. So once we have the kelp all replaced, you can tell it's working because if I throw a block in the water down here, As you can see, not quickly, but it slowly but surely floats to the top. It wasn't doing that before. It definitely was not doing that before. But it does slowly float to the top and then get collected in the hopper here. And the only thing you have to do before continuing this project, before everything grows back in, is to replace our block with redstone dust that we got rid of earlier to disarm it. So again, it's just as simple as, block, redstone on top. You know, if you did it the way I did it, it's definitely more complicated. But if you did it the way I'm showing you, you should do it. It should be so much easier than this. I was like cursing myself the whole time while making this video. I was like, I did this all backwards. I didn't want to start over. So you're getting my version. But as you can see here, the machine should be, yep, so the machine's still active. The best way to test is by going down there, planting some extra kelp. As you can see here, if we get far enough away, I just want to make sure that, yep, the kelp is coming right up and getting collected into the hopper. You're definitely going to lose a few down there, but eventually they should find their way back up when the next harvest comes, or you might just lose a few. But that's why we're making this farm at such a large caliber, because one, we're using it for bone meal, not just for kelp. And two, because you're definitely going to get some loss with this one. There's no way to avoid it, but it's also the easiest one to make. All right, so now that we have that, so we have the redstones working, the contraptions working. We already have 3 bone meal. That's great. And you can tell it's definitely working. So we've already collected 3 bone meal in the whopping 2 minutes I've been, showing you guys what I've been working on. So that's amazing. It's already working really well. And then technically you can just leave this. This can be it. That could be the end of the farm or the end of the tutorial. You know me, I'm very picky and I like to have all my builds matching in the world because this is my survival world. So all I'm gonna do is simply just use some oak logs as the trim and kind of tie it together with the rest of the build, making it look like a building. Now you could just leave it looking like a fish tank. You could leave it half open with the redstone exposed in the back. It's entirely up to you. This would be, I would say, would be the stopping point, unless you're into the cosmetics of the design, in which case I'm showing you how to do this now. I'm using oak logs around the exterior, almost to look like framing on the corners, and it's going to be all the way around. So you go build up all the way to the top, and then build out, and then add another leg at the corner. So if this doesn't make sense, you'll see as I'm wrapping this up. We're just going to the corners, and you're going to right here, and you're building to 1 block above it, and then you're building on both of the corners, and then you're building across and connecting them with like little pillars to make it look like it was framed in with the oak logs. I don't really know how to describe it better than that. That's kind of where my brain sees it, but you should have something that looks like this at the end where all the walls are framed in. We're going to leave this part open right here so you can access this farm from the back, but I will be blocking in all these walls so we don't have any weird looking gaps. So I'm going to add some blocks here. I already did on the other wall, so it looks nice and clean back here. It looks nice and framed in. Go to this side here, add some more blocks. Again, all we're doing is just covering up that redstone. And from the front, I love the way it looks from the front. I love how it kind of framed itself in really well. The only other thing we're going to do here is add a roof and add some design. So for the roof, I'm going with cobblestone. I'm going with like a high arched roof. So it's just as simple as placing some cobblestone stairs along the edge, almost like a little soffit that we're going to do. Again, this is not really part of the tutorial. I would like to point that out. If you're still watching at this point and you're interested, please stay. But don't feel like I'm going to add a little more, add an extra step. You're good if you want to stop. But if you are interested in the building part, yeah, feel free to stay. So we're just going around the corners here with the cobblestone stairs, like so. And I'm going to make a corner here. And I'm going to do the same thing on this side. And the type of roof I like to do is you do 1 stair, and then you get 1 full block and do 1 full block like this. One behind it almost diagonally, if that makes sense. So 1 staircase, 1 full block, and then on top of that full block, you do this, another staircase. And then you repeat this process until you reach the very peak. And it gives it those high vault ceilings, but it also gives it a lot more texture. And I personally like it just a little bit more, but that's okay. So once you have this, all I'm going to do is repeat this process like I did here on the opposite side until we get to the peak. I added a little thing there. You don't have to do that, but I did add a little just for details. As you can see here on the sides, it looks like that. That's why we go for that specific design. And from the front, it also looks great. I love how it turned out. And as you can see here, it's definitely still working just fine. So all we're going to do here, the last couple steps, is we're going to add some staircases in the corners to kind of add some even more dimension to that. And one other trick I'll show you guys how to use to add a little more dimension to your builds is by using trapdoors going all the way around. It almost looks like a little, I don't know, like a little indent or a well or some sort of framing. I like it. It's definitely one of the staples to my building tricks is some casually placed trapdoors will make everything look like it's planned. As you can see here, it just adds an extra layer, we'll call it. A little extra layer. But unfortunately, that is really all I have to teach you. This farm works best in 1.19, fully automatic, and it's going to be great for some upcoming projects I have planned with bone meal, or you can just use it for kelp, entirely up to you. If this video was helpful, please let me know. And I hope I gave you something to work with in your next Minecraft, adventure. Take care.